Started. And welcome everyone to the first Intentional Success webinar of 2021. It's entitled Business as Usual. Of course, it isn't. Business isn't usual, but maybe it has become so, and we need to talk about that today. So thank you all for being here. Uh, as for those of you, there's always new folks. So if you're new to this, I'm Tom Stimson. I'm founder of the Stimson Group. I produce the Intentional Success newsletter, intentionalsuccess.biz website, yada, 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 lots of stuff. And I am a business consultant for folks in the live events and the audiovisual industry in general, small business in general. I do work across a lot of different verticals, but you, this audience, you're primarily live events people. And that's where I come from. And I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm going to start, kind of hearkening back to, the fact that we are still in a pandemic. I'm going to start with a little bit of an update, tell you some things. Pardon, this is a lot of words on the screen, but I'm going to talk about them. So don't feel like you have to follow along and read all of this. Predictions, update. So we have vaccine rollout going on. Those of you who have talked to me offline, my message has been very consistent on that. Once we start having a predictable vaccine rollout, and we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. The past month has not been a real successful rollout. But once there's a predictable supply and scheduling and all that sort of stuff, we're probably about 9 months away from hitting the type of immunity that we need to feel comfortable getting back on airplanes, going back in ballrooms, albeit still with masks, still social distancing. But I think it's going to free up a lot of business. And remember, if you get your second vaccine, you're still like, was it 4 or 5 weeks away from your second shot before you actually have that immunity and that you can run around and be a little bit more safe. So this is a slow process. So once it starts in earnest, we're going to see some activity. If it's all going well at 6 months, if we've had a nice track record, I think the confidence to meet in person, which could be in the fourth quarter, those people who have meetings scheduled in Q4 of this year in the US will probably go through with those meetings. And of course, I still expect them to be hybrid. I still expect a virtual component on it. Matter of fact, I'm clarifying what my definition of hybrid is. You may have your own definition. My definition of a hybrid event is that both the local audience and the remote audience, they are equally important to the producer. We've been doing virtual audiences for decades, right? But the in-person audience was always the most important audience, and the remote audience was secondary. Very, very few exceptions. Sometimes we did broadcast work where the remote audience, and then we had a studio audience. In a true hybrid event, both audiences are vitally important. And that's something that we need to understand as we communicate with our customers. Throwing hybrid onto something because you got a rental out of it and there's some ballroom things doesn't do justice to the seriousness of figuring out why we're having this meeting and what's important about it. It takes away from that. So I caution you, focus on the meeting, focus on who the audiences are, what your clients are trying to accomplish, and less on what the transaction looks like from your end. Now, in the meantime, you're going to see a lot of delays and interim planning from your customers. I've talked to a lot of you about your Q1 sales funnel. Many segments are soft right now because your customer base is extremely uncertain. They're hoping to have in-person meetings later on in the year. They may not realize exactly how that will play out. So they're not having them now. They're hedging their bets. They're waiting a little bit. So that uncertainty for a certain clientele. Now, your clients, your end clients that rely heavily on meetings for whatever reason, pharma industry, direct selling, that sort of thing, they're going to have meetings year round regardless, are continuing to have them. But other segments are not because they don't have to. They're a little bit of a luxury and they're in a wait and see mode. Having said that, we have a great second quarter coming up because we're going to have our second season of graduations and outdoor and summer events. We're seeing outdoor concert touring coming, so we can be excited about that. If you have game in those spaces, you should be talking to those clients now. You should be getting all of your graduation clients lined up, get them to reserve their times and spaces, consolidate those jobs as best you can, um, and be the primary for as many schools or institutions or universities as you can in a single venue. Partner with the venues if that's what it takes, but get on it and get on it right now. So smaller budgets for now, Q3 and Q4, we're going to have larger budgets, particularly if we get on airplanes and travel a little bit. PPP2 is rolling out. For those of you in the US, is our payroll subsidy plan. I got my application in yesterday. I'm sure many of you did as well. Get with your banker. Whoever provided it for you in round one, it's a great place to start. It's to the bank's advantage to write it up for you. They're not really the decision maker. You meet the criteria, you get the loan. I've got some stuff on the Intentional Success Network in the 2021 group I'll talk about more later, where I've updated on what the differences are between, the first round of PPP last spring and what we have now, things that you need to be aware of about rules changing, EIDL loans, the EIDL advance that you had to pay back for PPP. You're going to get a refund on that. Just hang in there. Lots of good stuff. So find out about that. Now, what can this first quarter that we're in right now teach us? Because there's a lot of things going on that didn't manifest last fall. So one of my observations is that, Q2 last year, we were in the pandemic. It was all reactionary. It was pretty knee-jerk business. We did a little bit of stuff. Q3, there was some opportunistic, there were actually some pretty large budget jobs because the buyers needed to do something and they had a budget set aside and they're going to take a shot at spending it, was going to get them the ROI they needed. By Q4, we were starting to see more considered budgets. Our clientele, our buyers are getting a little bit more educated. The platforms that we've helped develop, as well as the ones that we've capitalized on, have matured and become more feature rich and easier to use. That's changing the whole field. Here we are in Q1. I think we have more folks who understand what it is that they're asking for, which will make some of you happy, but it also makes it harder for us to differentiate ourselves because we're telling them something they might already know. We're gonna have to figure out how to help them meet them where they are. And I keep saying that, but meet your customer where they are. Don't assume they don't know how to do a virtual meeting. They may have done many between the last time you talked to them. They maybe just didn't do it with you. So sales dynamics have changed. Lead times are changing. We don't know what the lead times are going to be in the virtual world, but we do know that you could put together a pretty huge meeting in 3 weeks if that's what you need to do. Less if you have to. But some lead times are actually a little bit longer. Uncertainty is still our enemy. We can survive and thrive in a pandemic, but the more predictable it is, the better we're all going to be. And that's when I talk about getting the vaccine rollout, getting some predictability and reliability into that process will improve, reduce the uncertainty in our clientele, get them to commit sooner, get them to commit maybe even with bigger budgets. It's a process, but we're seeing a transition here in Q1 for a lot of those customers while they get a feel for what the 2021 year is going to be like. Never mind the political uncertainty that we've had in the U.S. I think that has had an effect on customers' willingness to buy, but really I think it's more tied to how the pandemic recovery is being handled and what was going to happen with the federal subsidies and the vaccine response. Now, having said that, many of you are very busy right now, and I am thrilled about that. And I think we should be happy for all those people who are busy right now, even though some of you aren't. What I have found in the people who are very busy right now, and this is important, is they made stronger pivots. There's that word you hate. But if I go back and look at all the people who made strong pivots in the beginning of the pandemic, went to a heavy virtual space, built studios, adopted a platform, made a commitment to that for a long-term solution, those companies are doing pretty darn well. And they're seeing probably 70% of the clients that they're dealing with are people they've never dealt with before. So they have a new channel. Some of them are in new verticals. It's very exciting for them. So strong, it's not too late to pivot. I've been working with, I have a couple clients and folks that I work with indirectly who didn't make their pivot until Q4. And they're now regretting that they didn't do that sooner. Now, not all of you have a pivot you can make, or maybe your pivot isn't apparent to you, but please understand that there's a good opportunity out there and it is not too late for some of you. It's certainly something that we could talk about in a strategy session to figure out what might work for you, how it would work for you, who the audience would be, what would be different about it, and doing all of that. Now, many of you made horizontal pivots. You went from, corporate event staging to hosting studio work in your shop, and you stayed away from the production side, you stayed away from content, you tried to work with the exact same buyer. That it wasn't as strong a pivot. That has less staying power. And those are the people who seem to have a very slow Q1 this year. Those are the ones that I'm talking to who are going, man, I was pretty busy in the fall, but all of a sudden I'm not anymore. I don't know that the pivot is what makes the difference. It's the customer that makes the difference. So the people who made strong pivots found a new customer that has more economic buying power for the type of work that pivot serves. When it comes to pivoting, it's better to be fast than perfect. And even though you may have taken your time to make a decision to pivot, you can pivot very quickly. Don't let perfect get in the way of good. I talked to some folks yesterday that I talked to probably 2 or 3 months ago, and they are still marking the time before they do their pivot rollout sometime in March. So they're doing this really long run up, and I don't understand why. Get it out there. The audience, your buyer is already there, and they will accept an imperfect product and an imperfect delivery if the solution meets their needs. So get on it. If you need to change now. Some reminders. In my position, in my fortunate position that so many people come to me for insight and advice, I find myself making certain reminders again and again, and I want to share those with you. It's a little bit about talking us back from the edge of the cliff sometimes. Vaccines. Uncertainty about vaccines. I'm not trying to be political here. I'm telling you that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines in particular are extremely effective. Those are the ones that we have in the US by vaccine standards. A 90 to 95% efficacy rate on a vaccine is on par with the polio vaccine and some other vaccines that we've had around for decades of. So these are very, very effective vaccines. This is not a will this work? These will indeed work by every standard we've ever applied to vaccines. Are there some things we don't know? Absolutely. Are we going to get anywhere without a vaccine? No, we're not. So masks and vaccines are still your most valuable business tools right now. You may not agree with them for whatever reason, and I'm not going to question you or even judge you on that right now. As long as you use masks and you get your vaccine, it's going to help all of our businesses because we are part of the travel industry. Okay? Even if you never travel to do work, you are part of the travel industry. And if the travel industry doesn't come back, we're not going to come back. So that's what's going to get us back. You need to embrace it, if nothing else, for that. Hiring back employees. Don't forget about your employees, the people that you've furloughed, people that you've let go or laid off. They're still your friends. They're still important to you. But I'm telling you, hiring ahead of demand is not prudent. Some of you are telling me that, well, you're anticipating being busy in Q2. Awesome. And you want to hire your employees back now because you're afraid you're going to lose them to something else. Slow down. That's all I'm saying. Slow down. Focus on contract outsourcing. Go to those employees and give them a contract for the period that you expect to be busy rather than bringing them back full time. I'm all about keeping your overhead down, keeping the flexibility up. Outsourcing is still the watchword, and you're going to hear it several more times today. So think long and hard about that. And if you're still on the fence, give me a call. Let's talk you through it. There's always exceptions to the rule, but it's not time to stock back up yet. We don't have the steady demand that makes financial sense to put a lot of resources back on the table. Um, yeah. So let's talk about 2022 for just a second, because it's only a year away. Um, you're going to see a surge in demand. If things keep going the way they're going with vaccine rollout, we're going to see a surge in demand in 2022. Many of you are concerned that it's going to drive prices down. I'm telling you to think about this differently. I think it's going to drive prices up because demand is going to exceed capacity, and that puts you in a seller's market. Um, and we'll talk more about supply and demand later on in this webinar. So don't rush to create capacity. Focus on creating value, sharpen up your sales skills, move your prices up, be a better negotiator. I think it'll pay off for you. And here we go. Yeah, back to April, May, and June webinars. Update your business plan. All right, you've got a cash flow runway. Many of you, I mean, myself, I know many of you, kind of once you got into the fall and your runway had a little bit of distance on it, you just got busy with work. It's time to go back and look at it. Take that spreadsheet I gave you 6-7 months ago, run it again, update it, see where your cash flow really is. It should be at 6 months. You should have enough work in your pipeline. You should have your expenses low enough. You should have enough cash on hand. Calculate that PPP loan in there. Hold off on a second PPP draw if possible. Absolutely not. If you're eligible for the next round of PPP, okay, it's a forgivable loan. Go get it. That is free cash. There might be a small amount that you have to pay back, but frankly, with the rules changes on applying PPP that were made over the summer, and there's no reason you shouldn't have most of your PPP loan forgiven. That's going to extend your cash flow runway. That's going to get you through this slow first quarter. Absolutely do it. Now, since you're slow, if you are, focus on customer outreach and education, okay? Help them see that demand is going to hit all at once, and that if they're waiting to do their job in Q3 or Q4, that they need to be locking up and tying up that capacity now, because there's going to be a lot of demand. And if they're not a Fortune 100 or 1000 company, they may not have anybody left to hire. They may have trouble finding a venue space. They may have trouble finding platform for a virtual event. Educate them, let them know what's going on. We're not trying to hold a gun to their head. We just want them to understand that they need to make some choices. They need to make some reservations. They need to partner with somebody sooner than later, and that will help them out. Here's another problem thing we've had. Many of you saying, well, we did graduation last year and they're in May, so we usually start talking to them in April. No. We are producers now, right? If you're doing a virtual event, you're a producer. The time to reach out is when pre-production, timing backwards from when pre-production starts, not timing backwards from when the event starts. Right? So reset your clocks, reset your timeline. I am serious. If you've got a client who's got a May graduation and you want to be in on it, you need to be talking to them now. They may not be ready. They may not realize it, but look how long it takes to produce all those videos, all those vignettes, get all those things set up, how panicked and terrifying it was to do it last year, how rushed it was doing it. And they now have the time to do it better and not necessarily spend more money doing it, though some of them probably need to. So get out in front of those customers now. You have the time to do it. Help them understand why that's important. So I'll pause here for some questions. I see things are moving on PPP1. Just got our forgiveness letter this week, 100%. Took almost 3 months working on PPP2 now. Yeah. If any of you have questions, I'm having trouble keeping up with the chat, but put a question in Q&A. I'm happy to address that on the fly. There's a Oh, we got a busy chat today. Hey guys, I look forward to reading all of that afterwards. So sum it up, make your PPP2 application right away. It's pretty darn simple. I will warn you, do it from a Chrome browser. So we learned that the hard way. Um, and get after it because this is going to help you keep your business going. Let's see. Haven't heard anything about other SBA loans. The SBA site is quiet. I don't think we're going to get anything out of the SBA until we've got guidance from the new administration. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant is in play, is my understanding. I don't know who qualifies for that on this call, but if you are a venue and you have a business whose income is derived from venue operations, there is a loan out there specifically for you. It's really designed for hotels, theaters, and convention centers, but some of you have venues that you rent out and it may apply to you as well. So by all means, check in on that. Okay, so having said all that, we're 20 minutes in. Let's talk about today's webinar. So why am I always tell you why I'm having this webinar, why I think it's important. Here's why I think this particular webinar is important is I am on a mission to help you quit looking backwards to understand now. If you keep looking to the past and expecting your business to catch up with 2019, I'm afraid it just might, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So making comparisons to where you are now to pre-pandemic business, I find kind of unhealthy, and I'm trying to coach my clients past that. It's hard to do. We've always compared this year's results to last year's. Why wouldn't we do that now? Because they have nothing to do with each other. You're in a completely different business than you were in 2019 or the beginning of 2020. We need to be looking forward. We're still building a business. If you've ever been a startup, you know that the first 3 years don't give you any data that's going to help you in year 4, right? But by the time you're in year 4, you can start doing backwards comparisons because you've got some history and you have some consistency and you have some trends. So we don't have those yet. So stop comparing to pre-pandemic. We are probably already doing business as usual, which might make you feel a little sick to your stomach right now. But many of you could simply be doing more of the business that you have available instead of resenting the fact that it's not like the business you had before. There's business out there. I haven't talked to anybody who couldn't be busy if they want to, but many of them don't want to do the type of work that's available for you. I had no less than 3 people separately tell me last week, and they said, they told me like this. They go, Tom, we did a wedding. You did what? We did a wedding. I swore I'd never do weddings. We did a wedding. Whatever it is that you swore you would never do, that you have an opportunity to do now, look at your cash flow runway and give me one good reason why you wouldn't do it. It's a different world. So get out there, figure out what customers want, deliver what they want. You're going to be fine. Just do the work and don't be quite so prejudiced about the kind of work that it is. Because right now we're trying to put groceries on the table and hold on for the day when we can be a little bit more picky about the work that we do, which is what every business owner's goal is. We all want to be so successful in business that we can turn down work, right? We want to turn down better work. Right now, there's not a lot of work that makes sense to turn down. Get the work that you can. Keep your pipeline full. I've come across quotes, and this one just seemed really timely. You know, life is not a matter of holding good cards, but of sometimes playing a poor hand well. And that's business. Many of us have a poor hand right now. We need to focus on playing it better instead of regretting the fact that we don't have better cards. Sometimes you got to bluff, right? Maybe we need to be better at bluffing. Maybe we don't know what we're bluffing for. Maybe we think what other people have in their hands matters more than what we have in our hands. And sometimes that's not really true. Part of being an entrepreneur is figuring out how to play a poor hand well, because we all start with a poor hand. But then we get better and better hands through our intentional efforts. So what future you in the future, wants present you to know? That's what I want to talk about today. One day you're going to look back at this time period and you're going to be old like me. And, you've heard me wax nostalgic about, back in oh yeah, the recession in 2001 or 83. You're going to be talking about this time period, and you're going to be telling the people who are running businesses, 10, 20 years from now, um, what they should have learned and why the decisions they're making now don't reflect what they should have learned from this period, as I often do, right? Here's what I think 20 years from now that you're going to be talking about in this. The first thing I want you to do before I go any further is acknowledge the fact that this has been a freaking crisis, and this has been a train wreck for 10 months, 11 months, depending on how you count. Crisis is always personal. Okay? Remember, the first domino for me was back in February. It wasn't an, oh my, our industry is in trouble. It was, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Crisis is always personal first until you get your feet under you. Survival and extending survival to people around us, you, your family, your business, your colleagues, is a rational next step. And Craig, here's the airplane reference. You got to put your mask on before you help other people put their mask on, right? In a crisis, give yourself some slack. Surviving isn't the same as healing. Just because you survived doesn't mean you've healed. So give yourself an opportunity to heal. And I won't go on with this all ever. All of this that we've been through has taken a toll on you. Okay, it's taken a toll on all of us. And you're going to find it hard sometime to be creative, to be focused, to be empathetic. But you have days and you have moments when you can do that. Crisis is exhausting and it is pernicious. And we don't always know when it's manifesting. Give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack. It takes a long time to expunge crisis from your life, but you will do it. Today, I want to talk about the silver lining in this current crisis. I wouldn't have asked for a crisis to get us where we're going to go, but we have to take advantage of the opportunity that we have here. Before I go there, acknowledge your truths, okay? This crisis took away your awesome future and it replaced it with another one. It did it for me too. And it's hard to see the silver lining in all of this, but trust me, there is one. 2020 started at full speed. Sales funnels are overflowing. Sales records are being broken. Utilization was not an all-time high. But if you're honest with yourself, your profits kind of sucked. They've been getting smaller and smaller every year. You had to do more and more money to make the same amount of business. Do more business to make the same amount of money. Okay. We need to understand why that existed. And if we want to appreciate the upside to this pandemic crisis, we need to fix that problem, because I've been trying for years and now it's going to make a lot more sense to you. Now, you changed an industry at full speed, right? Do you understand what you've done in the past 10 months? March 2020, we're just trying to figure out how to use a green screen in the conference room. And then all of a sudden we're doing events with hundreds of people on them. And then we're throwing up giant video walls or projection walls and doing worldwide events. And then by the end of the year, we have so many awesome platforms out there that are designed to create the networking events, the communications events, even expo events online. They're not all perfect, but they're a heck of a lot better than they were when we started looking at them back in March. So we've done some great stuff. Okay. Many of you are still expecting a return to normal, and you're looking for signs that meetings as we knew them will happen again. I was on Facebook yesterday and I saw a comment from a freelancer. Somebody had posted a picture of work. They were in a ballroom, you do the carpet photo, and they said, I haven't worked since February. And I kind of wanted to reach out to the person, but then I didn't. But here's the thing. There are people out there who are working right now because there is work to be done. If you're a freelancer who hasn't had any work for months, you have my sympathies and my empathy, because I used to be a freelancer and I get it. The people who are working right now, the fact that they are working is more of a reflection on them than it is on you, right? However, there are things that you could be doing to be one of them, and you might need to do them. So look at what you could be doing differently. Is there different work you could be doing? Or do you need to be in a different industry? I don't know. But I'm proud of everybody who's working out there right now, and I'm excited for them that they're doing it. Because the gig economy has changed as much as your business economy has in this period. Resistance to change is absolutely futile. We can't stop it. The things I'm talking about today are going to happen. There's not a whole lot we can do with it. COVID-19 has accelerated some long overdue changes. And I'm by no means I'm saying that in-person meetings are dead. They're going to come back. I'm imploring you to consider that it will be a long while before they're important again. Okay? Audiences are important. Where audiences meet is not important yet. Okay? Much is going to change. Okay? And fighting the emergence of digital meetings is futile. Okay? And I might argue that it's self-destructive. So the burning the ships, you guys know the metaphor because I've done it before. Cortez comes to the New World, brings the ships. They land in Central America. They want to conquer the continent, and the soldiers and the sailors don't want to leave the shore because it's safe there. And so in order to fulfill his mission, they unloaded everything from the ships. They put them out in the harbor and they burnt them. And he told his people that, we will conquer the continent, then we will come back and we will rebuild ships and we will go home victorious. This is kind of what you need to be thinking about in your business. Okay. COVID has changed our lives. The pandemic has changed our lives, but we still have some control over how it changes our industry. All right. My biggest epiphany from all of this, the changes that we are experiencing have been a long time coming, and the pandemic has just accelerated them. And we have implemented in a matter of months things that would have taken years to learn otherwise. And for the rest of this presentation, I want to talk about what it is we're going to look back on and have seen and learned. And here it is, the supply demand curve. Let's skip 10 years ahead. 5 years is not enough. 10 will get us outside of our horizon of understanding. What will you be saying when we look back on this era? Well, we're going to look at supply and demand because economics is important, okay? And find and discover that we had, prior to the pandemic, a huge redundancy problem. Equipment and people have been duplicated across competitive companies with very little differentiation. And these companies all only have seasonal demand. So you have a bunch of companies who have seasonal business and are staffed for when they're busy. They are supplied, inventoried for when they're busy, and they're all competing for each other. So you have a huge supply, you have fixed demand, drives prices down. And we've been watching this go on for years. It's become easier and easier, to get leases and loans to buy new equipment, manufacturer financing, delayed payments, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's going to buy all the gear they could ever need so they never have to subrent and hire all the people they ever wanted so they never have to hire a gig worker. And here we are. You're overstaffed, you're over inventoried, and you're competing on price, which is just the worst possible scenario. The supply chain was duplicated again and again across large and small companies all across all geographies. Looking back, we will realize that this was wasteful and irrational. Okay, we didn't set up our supply chain properly in the events industry to do what we want to do. So as the supply increased and prices dropped, it became more and more difficult to make money. So businesses tried to control their gross profit by taking more things in-house. And the worse it got and the worse profits got, the more stuff we brought in-house. And it was getting ready to blow up anyway, right? Now, here we are. You've got a bunch of inventory that you have no demand for. And you are running a business that probably broke even by the end of this year, should be profitable this year, even if all you do is continue to do virtual events and watch the dust collect on your big sound systems and big projectors, right? So those are sunk costs. Don't buy more of them, right? Figure out how to run your business profitably, okay? So in this scenario, okay, you're trying to make money, you're trying to control your gross profit by taking more things in-house, And then you start to do some silly things that I see quite often. You manipulate your own financials and misclassify costs to make your gross profit look better. And I see a lot of folks stabilizing their gross profit while pushing things into overhead that are actually variable expenses, and their overhead goes up and down instead of it being the other way around. They get upset that, when they do recognize gross profit correctly, that some months their gross profit looks great. We're doing 70% gross profit, and other months it's 30% gross profit. They're missing the whole point of gross profit. It's the accumulated gross profit that exceeds your overhead expenses is where profit comes from. It's not the percentage of gross profit that ultimately matters. It's how much gross profit you accumulate. So we've been looking at the wrong numbers. We've been tricking ourselves about the numbers. And so we overhire full-time equivalents employees. We reduce outsourcing. That creates a false sense of capacity. Then when you do actually need to do overhires, you're not a good buyer because you're not a regular buyer and you don't have access to the best people and the best resources, and you're probably buying at the last minute. You overstock gear to reduce sub rentals, which means that you make bad business decisions by turning away business because there's sub rental involved or there requires outsourcing. All sorts of really bad things happen to events businesses when they get caught up in this circular logic of I want to focus on controlling costs rather than focus on generating accumulated gross profit. And then in all of this, everyone wants to reach an exit strategy. A lot of people are my age out there running companies, and they want an exit strategy. They maybe they thought it would be in the next year or two, and now it's going to be postponed. These decisions to build inventory and leverage depreciation, putting my financial hat on, which would increase EBITDA, which would theoretically increase your company valuation if the company is valued on EBITDA. All of these people fail to consider that a sudden devaluation of rental assets would adversely affect their exit strategy. Okay, it makes perfect sense, but that was a bubble. That was a bubble that we grew. It got burst. There are better ways to create value in your business for an exit strategy than leveraging EBITDA for a multiplier. So we could have addressed all of these things over time. And honestly, if you go back and look at what I've been writing for the past 10 years, I've been trying. I've been telling you about this stuff. It's unfortunate that we had to have this kind of event, this kind of year to make all of this stuff so manifest. It's unfortunate, but now that we have this knowledge, now we have this direct experience, okay, then there are things that we can do better. And that's embracing this outsourcing. It's embracing the fact that it's okay to subrent. It's okay to contract work out. It's okay to hire freelancers. It's okay not to staff up. That you can run a pretty good sized company. You can run the company as big as the company that you had a year ago with probably 20% of the staff, and you will be more profitable. We've done it time and time again. The math is there. What it needs is your effort, your intention, and your understanding of how to make that business work. Understanding the value proposition of an organization like that. The pandemic has been the lighter fluid on our open flame of leaking profits. The bubbles burst. This is what we will have learned when we look back. We need to reset our expectations about how to run a business. No other industry runs the way that we do and lives to tell about it. We can fix this. We can make it better. And the time to do that is now. So here we are. In 2030, you're going to look back and remember who changed and who didn't. We're going to say, hey, you remember that company? Yeah, what happened to them? Oh, we lost them about 22. They didn't make the turn. Crisis forces change. In business, a crisis starts as a tactical problem, right? It was a tactical problem in March. What did we do? We reduced cost. We reduced hours, put people on furlough. We reined in our receivables. We moved up with maybe some planned layoffs. We postponed some purchases. But after a short while, it becomes strategic. How long is this situation going to last? What will we need to do to survive? Is there an opportunity hiding in there somewhere? Should I pivot? Your 2030 self is going to looking at you right now and wondering, when are you going to become more strategic? Because strategy is what is important right now. What's the strategy that's going to let you run your business in, forgive the expression, our new normal? Okay. Strategy is engineering what you want to happen based on what you think will happen. What do you think is going to happen? Why do you think I keep telling you what I think the next year is going to look like? Because I want you to use that information, modify it to your tastes and your needs and your view, so that you can engineer what you want to happen based on that scenario. So what do you think is going to happen? Okay. You changed course at full speed, starting out being reactionary, then maybe becoming strategic. Do you really expect another full speed course correction to go back to the way things used to be? I'm not expecting that. Will everything change back and companies return to their lanes that they were in before? And you'll have the same client that you had a year ago and not the client that you have now? Or are we on a path that's going to evolve more slowly? Okay. You can hold on to the ground that you've gained. Those of you who made a significant pivot and have moved up in the value chain, you're dealing more directly with an economic buyer, because the event planner you dealt with before no longer exists, no longer adds anything to the event. You're now dealing with a chief marketing officer or a CIO. Why would you want to go back to the way things were when you're now closer to the source of decision-making and money and control? Okay. Is there a reset in our future that's going to push everybody back to where they were? Or are we now on a new timeline? And comic book, are we in a new universe? And what are the rules of that universe? My job, my role is to help you with understand the future and apply it to you. I'm not 100% right, but I have a pretty darn good track record of extrapolating current conditions and describing what's going to happen with them. So I'm worth considering in your thinking about how you're going to approach the next year and then the year after that. And at the end of the day, it's what you think that matters. Okay? What are we doing with what your belief is, what your vision for the future is, and how are you applying that to business to make decisions now? So let's talk a little bit about predictions. I gave you, I think it was the November webinar. I made a bunch of predictions about the coming year. But I also didn't share all my predictions with you. And those of you who may have been on an event that I spoke at for Christie Digital for the Rental Partners meeting will recognize some of these predictions, but they've been updated and modified because we've got 2 months, which is an eternity right now. So I've got some unshared predictions that I want to give with you. Unrestricted live audiences, an audience which is not required to wear a mask or make any special accommodations for travel, are going to return in 2023. It may not be the beginning of 2023, but sometime in 2023, that's going to become normal again. And that's a long time from now. Okay. So a completely unrestricted, non-hybrid live audience in 2023, probably second half. But in order for that to happen, meetings have to be quantifiably safe. Attendees have to be completely confident and comfortable with the price of that safety, whatever it might be. The reasonable alternative has to become less attractive. But all of that's really kind of irrelevant, because my point in this prediction is that there is no pent-up demand that's suddenly going to unleash because everybody's had the vaccine. I don't see any pent-up demand. I think it would be unwise to plan on pent-up demand. And even if there is pent-up demand, to my earlier comment, that's a sudden increase in demand. All that should do is drive your prices up and help you make more money and turn down better business. Okay. The audiences that we relied on a year ago have moved on. We will have moved on by 23. And this is all going to happen so gradually that you're probably not going to notice unless you are still operating as if 2019 is going to come back again. So this milestone of unrestricted live audience doesn't change one bit what you need to do today. So use it as you think fit. Okay. We have business at hand with information we can use right now that matters. Another unshared prediction, vertical integration of supply chains will only matter to large companies. So what does this mean? You look at some of the big companies in our industry, and they usually grow through acquisition. And within that company, they have all the labor, all the equipment, all the supplies, all the talent they need to do a full service turnkey project for major clients. They do occasionally run out, but basically they vertically integrate everything they need. So on a good day, they don't outsource anything. If you're a really large company, if you're $100 million plus organization, you have that opportunity and you can do that. And that's really all that matters to. The rest of us shouldn't be trying to figure out how to vertically integrate our businesses. That's the problem I was describing from pre-pandemic times. Oversupply, too much redundancy, not enough profit. You can be a $1 billion corporation and make 2% profit, and that's a ton of money. Be a $5 million company and 2% profit, that won't fund your retirement. So you've got to think differently about profit. So big companies care about that stuff. Little companies should care more about outsourcing. So vertically integrating the supply chain in a seasonal industry, and I don't think there's anybody on this call right now who is not seasonal, right? You have busy months and slow months that are normal busy, normal slow. Vertically integrating in seasonal is insane because that means you always have an extraordinary amount of excess capacity and expense in slow months. And for some of you, that's half your year. So think more logically. You have an opportunity to rebuild your business much more logically. So this will benefit mid and small size businesses. Don't worry about the competition. Competition has never mattered. You've never heard me say that you should be focused on your competition. Focus on your ideal customers. Okay. They will tell you everything you need to know about how to grow and make money. All right. Pay attention to them. Another unshared prediction. And this one's very interesting to me because my background's, I came from theater. I grew up in theater. I originally planned on having a career in theater. The lines between theater, broadcast, and meetings are vanishing, and it's never been more apparent that they're going to vanish than right now in the streaming world, because I'm watching theater people do streaming events, and I'm watching meetings people do streaming theater. It's all the technologies have converged, and once the audience is on the other side of the pipe, it's amazing how similar we all are. So the lines between broadcast theater and meetings are vanishing from the audience's point of view. The audience doesn't know and really doesn't care whether the people behind this award show are theater people or broadcast people or events people. All they care is, am I consuming something that I enjoy consuming? So what's happening behind the scenes is going to matter less and less. Now, let me be historical here, because back in 1990, we had multiple event industries and each had their own tiers. So concert touring, theatrical, industrial, corporate events, association meetings were all distinctly different. And our suppliers, our technicians, our freelancers, our supply chains were very different. People who did association meetings bought their supplies from completely different companies than concert touring or theatrical. Technicians, I had to pick one. I picked industrial and corporate events because you can't be successful. You can't cross over. Very few people made that crossover back then. Today, all of these is really more of one industry with slightly different audiences. And once the audiences are virtual, they're really kind of the same audience, aren't they? So we're streaming and we're narrowcasting. Okay? The audience could be anywhere, could be anyone. That means that the people producing it could also be anywhere and be anyone. So that's going to have some interesting repercussions. We'll see how that plays out. Now, I'm getting the two most important questions I'm getting right now is, where can I find salespeople, and what's going to happen to the M&A market? mergers and acquisitions. Who'd have thunk it? With everything going on, that's the most prevalent question I get. Tom, what's this going to do to the M&A market? Um, Here's the thing. We're looking back from 10 years from now, looking back on this time period, industry consolidation, that thing that we've been expecting to happen since the 90s, so the last time we had roll-ups, which were mostly unsuccessful. We've been expecting an industry consolidation since that time. And the fact of the matter is, the amount of capitalized assets involved in our industry on inventory-based production rental companies are been a huge deterrent to the financial industry. They don't want anything to do with your inventory and your capex. They come in, they look at you for a couple of years, and then they go away. If we can normalize our businesses without the excess inventory, without the overcapitalization, without the excess redundant supply, that's going to help you business owners have a more sellable business, a more consolidatable business in the future, if that is indeed your exit strategy. It's going to make your balance sheet look better. It's going to make it easier to get cash flow when you need it, because you've got a big project that you need to fund and you need a line of credit, and not having a bunch of inventory debt hanging over your head. It's going to make a huge difference in the long-term viability and attractiveness to investors for your business. It will also make consolidating businesses much more quick and much more profitable. We will be more attractive. What slows down consolidation right now is the fact that your businesses are much too complex. There's not enough margin in there. The balance sheet is messy. The deposits, cash flow, there's all sorts of noise in there. But the overarching thing is the first thing everybody wants after a merger is a cash injection to buy more equipment so you can grow. The finance industry does not like that model. We have a chance to now build models that make more sense. So I've talked a lot about agencies, and certainly if I'm talking about agency outsourcing as a primary mode of doing business, I'm talking about the agency model that I've been talking about ad nauseum since the summer. What's going to matter in these agencies that you're building? And I put these in order of important. You need creative vision in order to be an effective agency on any level in any space. You need some technical intellect. That doesn't mean you need all the technical expertise. You need some technical intellect. You need creative production, which is that production management, that client-facing skill set that creates something out of nothing. You need management because you do have finance and control, and you need procurement because you're going to be outsourcing. These are the things that are really important that you'll have to focus on to run an effective agency. It's not all about, how many technicians you have, how many salespeople you have, how many people you have working in the warehouse. If you get these things right, you can run a business with literally no field employees and no inventory if that's what you choose to do, though I know that most of you don't want to do it quite that way. So as we get towards the ends here, let me tell you what I think you should be doing now, so that we can get to 2020 or 2030 and look back and have a beer together and talk about this. Continue to stay very lean and stay very nimble, okay? Minimize overhead forever. If you've learned nothing from the past 10 months, overhead is the enemy. Do not add overhead until you absolutely have to, where it makes financial sense to do it, where you're not just doing it from fear. Price dynamically, okay? We need to have a better understanding about the relationship with demand and price dynamically. That's how you will maximize your profit. When you're slow, you're going to price lower. When you're busy, you're going to price higher. And you have to have the confidence and the sales pipeline to do that effectively. You've got to run a healthy business so that you can price dynamically, which means that you're going to invest in marketing, okay? Grow your market share. The number of you who do not spend money on marketing is getting smaller because I've been banging this drum for so many years. Marketing is what's going to get you out of the position that you're in now and make you more profitable in the future. Focusing on customer needs might mean blowing up the channel. If you've had to bypass some of your old customers to get to the buyers that you need to get to, meeting planner channels, producer channels, and you've had to bypass them so that you can get to your corporate buyers or your association buyers, whatever it might be, um, you probably need to do more of it. I wouldn't give that up. Um, I know you're supposed to dance with the one that run you, but you also need to run your business for yourself and for the future. Don't give up any channel that you've taken over, because that's how you're going to get to the next level. And it behooves all of us to build the gig economy. Okay. If you have a good gig economy, if you have good procurement into the gig economy, you are infinitely scalable, which means that you are infinitely profitable. And without the gig economy, there's only so much business you can do. There's only so fast you can grow, and there's only so much money you can make. So the gig economy is really key to doing all of this. And so how are we going to know when the future starts? Okay, how do we know we've made it to this future? Um, when we stop using terms like hybrid, virtual, or streaming to describe an event, and we just start calling them events, and an event is defined by its audience, which is wherever they want to be. So how we deliver an event doesn't define it. What the audience is defines what the event is. They're all just events. You're doing events now. Some of them happen to be virtual only. Okay? It's still an event, and we're still in the event business. So I want to thank all of you guys for following me and listening to me today. I've got a few more things to talk about, but I'm excited for here. Please post some questions. I'm going to hang around. We're probably going to run a few minutes long. I don't mind hanging out answering your questions, but if you will, please give me a moment and let me pitch a couple things to you very quickly. I want to connect. You know how we get started doing business. If you're ready to work on your strategy and figure out where you need to go, how to get there, give me a call. An introductory call is a way for us to get started, see if we're a good fit for each other. Drop over at intentionalsuccess.biz, QR code. I'm not going to leave it up there really long. Go find that. Go visit the 2021 Rapid Response discussion under groups. Join that group. I'm doing some great stuff in there. When I'm proud of my work, it must be good, because I'm usually very critical. I've got some great videos in there about things that you need to be working on in your business now. This is the place to go find them. This is the only place you're going to find them. We can have some great Q&A discussions in there. I've got some stuff in here, some articles about PPP plus some links to sources. So if you're looking at PPP2 and you want to understand what's different, I already spent an entire Saturday consolidating everything I could find on it. It's all there. Go visit it. That's what the network's for. Lots of good reasons to join in there. Of course, and I've got free courses and all that kind of good stuff in there as well. Next month's webinar, we're going to talk about selling. From now until then, I'm talking about sales, because sales is the most important thing right now. You've done all the other stuff. Okay, now we've got to build market share. We got to get our sales up. We got to focus on that. That's where our energy needs to be. Each week's Intentional Success newsletter will have a blog about sales and some comments about that. Let's put some energy there. It will pay off. So good questions. Keep questions. Use the Q&A box if you can. Summary. Our biggest problem is that we have too many choices. One of the effects of doing good strategy is it simplifies things. It eliminates choices. It makes some choices unimportant, and that's what we need right now. We need to simplify, reduce your choices so that you can move forward more quickly. For many companies, this means quit waiting for consensus. Strategy by consensus is horrible. Strategy through leadership is usually pretty effective. So part of leadership's job is to reduce the number of choices that are on the table, and ultimately to make the choice about where you're going, and have the team contribute about how to best get there. Focus on intentionality. Okay. What is it that you want to happen? That's probably the most important question in a strategy session. We may say it in different ways, but ultimately what we're saying, what do you want to happen? Well, I want to make money again. Great. Why can't we say that out loud? Because now we have something to work on. So focus on doing things intentionally, which means we have to focus on the intentionality of what it is we want to do. Stop debating, stop seeking consensus, decide and move forward. That's what I want you to take away from today, as well as an interesting look backwards from the future. And I look forward to your comments and dissent about all of that going forward. So I'm going to pause. We got a couple questions here that I think I can squeeze in. So, yeah, I've heard that Live Nation wants to open up venues. Of course, they're in the venue business. So have you heard anything about this? And if so, what effect do you think it would have on the corporate as opposed to the touring business? So Live Nation is the venue business. They very much need acts to be coming through their venues. Fortunately, a lot of their venues are outside, but some of their venues are inside. We're not going to see Broadway come back for quite a while yet because it's not safe. I'm reluctant to get behind any move that opens up venues too soon. We're in a horrible situation. We have 400,000 people have died, half of them since November. I mean, it's crazy out there. I don't know how else to say this. Wear your freaking mask and stay away from people. Wash your hands. It's too soon to do some of these things, even though it might be good for your business. It's not good for life, and it's not going to get us back to work sooner. It's going to make this last longer. And if we had taken the steps to be diligent about all of this beforehand, we would be having a very different webinar right now. So I'm excited for the vaccine. I'm excited for the opportunities that it offers us, but we need to look at metrics that will affect whether or not it's safe to go into restaurants, much less, hotels. And that has to do with positivity rates, and come to understand that and track that. I mean, I'm in Dallas, Texas. My neighborhood is fortunately a very low positivity neighborhood, but I'm in a city that has 90% of its intensive care unit beds full. I have friends who have had loved ones who were redirected from emergency rooms in Dallas, where their primary care has been, all the way over to Fort Worth, which is a good hour and 15-minute ride in an ambulance. We're not ready yet. We have normal business as usual that we can do without accelerating the pace of some dangerous policies that we've had in the past. So I'm sorry, I'm pontificating. Another question, comment here. Given that President Biden campaigned on moving gig workers to being employees, how do you think about that kind of change would affect the staffing issues you talked about? So the classification of whether a person is an employee versus a full-time employee, those are still two different things. I'm actually, my first company was a staffing company. I've been an expert. I've been an authority on independent staffing for, oh gosh, it's been over 30 years. I'm in favor of employee status. I believe that freelancers should be W-2 employees for the companies that they work for. I think we have better ways that we can facilitate that through centralized employers and employers of record, rather than putting the burden on the small businesses of all that. But just the fact that you're W-2 doesn't make you a full-time employee. So that's not overhead. Hiring a gig worker when you need them and paying them W-2. We do have some things that have to be sorted about how benefits are accumulated and whatnot. It was the California's SB 50. There are a lot of positive things there, in my opinion. I know some of you are going to disagree with me vehemently on that, but ultimately, I think it's a good thing. I am pro-union. I like what unions have done for us. Again, I come from theater. Unions kept people from dying doing theater. So I think there's some institutional changes that we could make that will help gig workers thrive yet remain independent. And if your reason for remaining independent is that you want to avoid paying taxes, then I'm not trying to help you at all. You're in the wrong. I love paying taxes personally. You only pay taxes if you made money. So if I'm writing a check to the government, that means I made money. I'm a happy camper. I think we can help each other better understand the value of all of that. So I'm pontificating. Of course, that's when I start to lose people. So let me wrap it up and say thank you once again for being with me today. If you've got more questions, don't hesitate to email me. Um, check your email on Friday. I'm going to send you another offer. We're going to be reinstating the 15-minute free coaching calls. If you've got questions about PPP or any decision that you need to make right now about your business, I'm happy to share my expertise with you. These are not sales pitches. I don't try and sell you anything. I just give you some pure unadulterated Tom for 15 or 20 minutes to help you get through that decision process. If you want to hear about how you and I can work together and hear the sales pitch, then book an introductory call and let's talk about where your goals are and how I can help you get there and see if we're a good fit together. So with all that, thank you guys. Happy 2021, and we will see you next month.